Okay, so we're gonna look at another side series in the Shin Megami Tensei series, and this one, this one, it's kind of a mixed series in that the styles for the games change drastically. I think between some of them, but the first one in the series here is this one, Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner. Here's the Saturn version and the PSP version, and I'm showing you both because they're a little bit different actually. The Saturn version is it's a first-person dungeon crawler, and it's pretty similar to the way Shin Megami Tensei, the first game on the Super Famicom, starts. You start like doing normal things, but in this case, instead of like demons happening, well, I mean demons kind of appear, but you're killed pretty much immediately at the beginning of the game. You're just straight up killed by the by random serial killer dude in the beginning. I mean, he's random serial killer dude in the beginning, but you know, of course, he comes back, and you're kind of reincarnated. Not exactly. Somebody is kind of reincarnated. You're kind of reincarnated into the body of somebody else who is dead, who was killed earlier. It's kind of weird how to explain it, but it's it plays like a first-person dungeon crawler and with a kind of overworld. So if you've played Persona 1, the setup is pretty similar, except the demon summoning and negotiation is totally different. It's more like the Shin Megami Tensei series. And except in this case, the series, I mean the Saturn one here, is the one that it's ridiculously frustrating to play. And I'm not saying it's not a bad game actually. The story is pretty good, and you know the dungeon crawling is good, but there's kind of long-ish load times, and one of the most annoying parts is that the demon negotiation is tedious. Like, it's long, and lots of times you'll fail, and after like a long kind of conversation you fail, you have to do it again and again and again, and it's kind of random. It's not exactly the same every time, so, I mean, like all the other games too, but you find yourself like negotiating a lot and failing a lot, and it just gets frustrating because it takes so much time, because there's a lot of loading, and it makes the gameplay really slow, which makes it not one of my favorite games in the series, despite it being like a pretty good first-person dungeon crawler. If it weren't for like the kind of I don't know, like kind of garbage negotiation in this game, it would be a much better game. And that's like, they tried to fix it actually on the PSP version, but it's not fixed enough. I don't think like you could take this game and fix it enough without like taking things out entirely. And you know, it's a valiant effort on the PSP, but it doesn't quite make up for it. I mean, it's a little bit better. I mean, actually, I think they made this easier too, which is not something I was excited about, but they did make it a little bit faster, which is, you know, kind of a good trade-off, I guess. But again, if you haven't played this one, the first Devil Summoner, it's not a must-play or anything, but it's not bad. It's kind of just mediocre, and you'll probably be frustrated with it, especially if you can't read Japanese. So maybe I could say that you could easily pass this one up and not really feel bad about it. But there is another one in the series after that. This is Devil Summoner Soul Hackers. And Soul Hackers, on the other hand, compared to the first game, is much better, much better. It looks a lot better, it plays a lot better, and let me think about it. This game is actually like a dumbed down version of the first game. And I'm not saying that like, it's not really a negative, it kind of is, but it's not. In that this game is easy, it's not incredibly difficult or anything. But a lot of it makes up for a lot of the problems that the first Devil Summoner had, because of the kind of like tedious bits which made it not as fun. So this one actually it doesn't really, I mean, like I said, to fix the first game, you'd probably have to cut things out. They actually cut things out in this one, which, you know, some people didn't like, and some people did. It's kind of like the easy to get into first-person dungeon crawler, because it's not so difficult. And it doesn't have a lot of the kind of complicated tedium that the first game has, which... And also, the world for this game is great. Everything looks really nice, and it's kind of like a more cyberpunk feel to it. Like, there's kind of like more hacking, and it's, I mean, you're kind of like part of a hacker group in this, so there's more like of the computer-based like hacking stuff that is not, it's present in all the most of the other games, but it's not so important in those, whereas it's kind of important in this. So this game actually is great. I would recommend this one. It's coming out again on the 3DS at the end of the month. I don't know if there's going to be an English release, but you know, keep your fingers crossed, because it's actually quite a good game. It's actually the game that's forcing me to buy a 3DS, so I'll have this game at the end of the month. I'll probably do an unboxing. But yeah. Devil Summoner Soul Hackers is definitely a good one. And I can't wait to play it on the 3DS, actually. I think it's going to be awesome, because I think the 3DS is like one of, maybe the DS, and probably I don't have a 3DS yet. So, but the DS, and you know, by the form factor of the 3DS being the same, it's the optimal system for me to play first-person dungeon crawlers on now, because you know, you have the bottom screen for your map and your information, and you can leave the top screen open for just the dungeon crawling, which is optimal. Like, I really enjoy that part of the setup for it. It's really great. So definitely play Soul Hackers. If it comes out, I mean, in the US, I mean, obviously the region locking and stuff on the 3DS is kind of a, you know, a downside, but what can you do? But then we've also got Devil Summoner. This is the first Devil Summoner on the PS2, and it's not like the other ones. It's not a first-person dungeon crawler. It's an action RPG, which is, if you're a fan of the Devil Summoner series and you didn't know that this one wasn't going to be a first-person dungeon crawler, you're probably disappointed with it right from the start. And I can say that maybe I was a little disappointed with it too. I'm not like a huge action RPG fan, but I like them. I'm not saying I don't like action RPGs. I play tons of them. But in this case, for Shin Megami Tensei, I don't think it works in the same way. It doesn't make me like the series in the same way that I like the other games. Because although you do have the demon summoning and fusing, which is fun, you don't have the strategy element that makes the battles in the games interesting. Like, I mean, it's kind of there, but it's more like, you know, a lot more action-y. I mean, it's an action RPG, but the action part takes away from the strategy part that I really enjoy, which makes, you know, the other games more difficult, whereas this one is kind of like, as long as you have the right elements to fight your bosses or whatever, and you don't have the weaknesses that they're attacking, you can win. That's pretty much it. It's just kind of, you could probably muddle through it without really thinking. Just, you know, if you find the right combinations, you'd be fine. And that's kind of what it turned out to be. I didn't, you know, I enjoyed it, but not like crazy enjoyed it. Like, I wouldn't say it's one of the best games to play, but it's still a fun one, and the setting is really interesting. So if you like the kind of like older Japanese setting, and the characters are pretty cool, so you know, you've got a trade-off though. The action RPG elements I don't really like, but you know, it's not a bad game. And then you have Devil Summoner 2, which I don't have a copy of anymore. Again, I gave it away, but I'll get it again eventually. But Devil Summoner 2 is actually a little better than Devil Summoner 1, but again, I don't enjoy it the way I enjoy the other games in the series, because it's, you know, I don't feel it's like as much strategizing as it is just like being kind of deft with your hands in the sense that, like, you know, it's very actiony. Like, you have to be able to dodge and stuff a lot, whereas, you know, the other ones you have to really think about what you're doing more, which I enjoy. But anyway, Devil Summoner it's still good. I would recommend Devil Summoner, but yeah. But besides Devil Summoner, there's also another kind of one-off series that's on the PS2 that is absolutely spectacular, and that is Digital Devil Saga. And Digital Devil Saga on the PS2 is amazing. I can't out of the PS2 games, out of all the Shin Megami Tensei PS2 games, this one is probably my favorite. Not actually, both of them together as one game are my favorite. But there is Digital Devil Saga 2, which they're like it's like half a game plus half a game. So, but the first one here it takes place in like a kind of different world than the other ones, with the same characters obviously between the two. But this one I found made up for a lot of the problems I had with Nocturne, and not that I had a lot of problems with Nocturne, but I just thought it was a little too easy. And whereas Digital Devil Saga had a lot of battles where you actually did have to think about the strategy for them. You really had to pay attention to what was happening. You had to like look for cues, look for certain kinds of weaknesses, or nothing, or you died basically. So even though I was way over leveled and I maxed out everybody in the first game, I still had some trouble with some bosses. It wasn't like kind of like a breeze through like I thought Nocturne was. I really like had to think about battles a lot in some cases. So like I had actually some trouble with some of the bosses, even though I was way over leveled. So I like that element. And what's cool about this one is that if you clear it, you can import your data into the second game, which is Digital Devil Saga 2, which is the second half of the story and takes place in a different world, sort of. But the story itself is pretty interesting. You get a lot of good stuff out of it, and especially with this game, the opening movie is awesome. I can't explain. I can't like stress how awesome the opening movie for this game is. I don't know how many times I watched it, but a lot. I think it's so great. I can't think of a better opening movie. It's just so cool. And the characters in this game are great. I like the new characters that they added, and I just like the whole story. There's very little to complain about with this game. It's out of the PS2 series, this one is probably my favorite. So Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2 together. Quite good games. Definitely games you should play. So yeah, that's the end of those, but we've got one more series to look at, and I'm sure you guys all know what it is, but let's look next at Persona.